Hey everybody, I'm Ethan James with the honestcarpenter.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how to fix the rotted floor of a sink cabinet like this one behind me. So this is another thing that I just see all the time. I've done this repair maybe 20 times in my life. These prefabricated cabinets come out of factories and they put particle board floors in them. It just doesn't make any sense because the moment you start to get drips out of the drain lines, the supply lines, or disposal like this, that particle board soaks it up and you wind up with these big dips. You can hardly see it, but there's a really big belly in this floor here, and sometimes the stuff will just rot straight through. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to take this out. The cabinet would essentially fall apart if I did that. Instead, I'm going to make a custom plywood floor that can come in and lay over top this one like a bridge. And there's a couple tricks that I have to use to make that work, but I'll show them to you now. To begin the repair, I just go ahead and pull the internal measurements of the cabinet. First front to back, and then pull side to side. Just butt the tape up against the left wall and pull to the right. And you're looking to get within maybe 1/8 of an inch in either of these directions. Doesn't have to be dead tight. I go ahead and write my measurements on the floor of the cabinet so I don't forget them. It's going to get covered up anyways. And for our replacement material, we're using 1/2-inch plywood. This is specifically Sand-A-Ply, which is Home Depot's brand of plywood. It's cheap, it's almost cabinet grade, it looks good when it's painted. So I go ahead and set up the saw to cut the front to back measurement. And once I've ripped that down, I set up the side to side cut. I don't bother even pulling out a circular saw for this. To cut my full panel, I set it on the miter saw, make my first cut from one direction, flip the piece around, and then make the finishing cut from the other direction, as you can see. But this full-size piece won't fit in the cabinet because the face frame at the center obviously won't let it in. So we need to split this piece in half. I just go ahead and cut it right down the center, once again with the miter saw. You could, of course, do this on a table saw if you wanted to. And before I take it inside, I mark the front and the back. This helps a lot keeping orientation in mind. It's easy to get the sides confused. And I also put these two little reference marks in the middle to let me know when we're lined up well. Once that's done, I bring them in and I carefully work them into the cabinet. Don't hit any plumbing too hard. Don't hit the disposal. Just kind of tilt them and lean them until they're propped up like this. And they'll be resting on the pipes at the back. Go ahead and mark the locations of those pipes. Leave your marks about 1/2 inch outside of the pipe location, and then also pull measurements from the back of the cabinet to the front of the pipe. This is going to be the depth of the notches that we make to allow our pieces to slide back into the cabinet. Here I go ahead and bring those measurements out and I transfer them onto the pieces that we're going to be putting in. You can see I just make essentially little squares representing where the notches go. But I'm not going to cut square notches. Instead, I'm going to use hole saw bits in my drill to cut circular notches right up at the perimeter of where we want them. Here you can see probably a 3.5-inch hole saw bit chucked into my drill, and I line up that front edge with the front of where I want the notch to be, and I just go ahead and bore right down through it. There's the 3.5, and the other hole saw bits, I just size them by eye basically. And I've got a Bosch quick change bit. All these pieces just slide onto this mandrel here real quickly. It's a real good tool to have around. So when I have all three of my holes bored, I go ahead and set up my jigsaw, and I just carefully notch them out. You can see I come in straight from the back following my guidelines, and then I taper in towards the center to follow the curve of the hole that the hole saw bit left. I just do this by eye, just go slowly. But it ends up making a really nice looking notch. And you can see as this piece falls away, you just kind of have this U-shaped scoop in the back. So I go ahead and repeat that on my other two pipe locations, bring them in, work them into the cabinet, and set them in place. And I pull them tight to the front of the cabinet. If there's any space, I want it at the back. But you can notice I left a little gap around the pipe. I don't want our panel touching the pipe because pipes can sweat, condensation, and it can start another rot process. So here all around you can tell that I left my notches just a little shy, and I've got the reference marks on the board lined up. They weren't quite right. The cabinet's a little out of square, so I wedge my screwdriver back here and bring the right one forward just a little bit. And we're not quite ready yet to bring in the other board. Instead, I want to create a way to bond the two boards together better over this dip. And we're actually going to use the dip to our advantage. I like to create a little plywood ligament to bond the two together out of 1/8" scrap plywood. I just cut maybe a 3-inch wide piece. It's like a foot long. And then I bring it in and I just use liquid nails to go ahead and put a couple dabs underneath the board that's already installed. You don't have to do this, but it's usually how I start. And then I run a bead down this plywood, 1/8" plywood piece on the left, and I press it up under the board that's already installed and shoot down through it with maybe like 3/4 inch brads to lock it in place. Don't shoot through your finger doing this. Make sure your fingers are out of the way. But when that's done, you can go ahead and run liquid nails on the exposed side of that 1/8" scrap plywood. Set the other panel in and just press it down good and hard onto the liquid nails and the scrap plywood. And you want to kind of work it back and forth, kind of smush that liquid nails into place. And now shoot down through the new board with 3/4 inch brads into our 1/8" scrap piece. And this is really going to lock these two panels together. They won't be able to go anywhere. The adhesive is going to set up over time. And you can get the boards pretty flush doing it this way. Then I just go around the perimeter and I just put in a few extra brads to keep the whole thing from shifting around a little bit. You don't have to go overkill. You probably don't even have to do that step if you don't want to. And the last thing we have to do is address this kind of ugly plywood front edge. I don't like to leave it like this. You could just paint it and caulk it if you want to. I like to go a step farther and add a little custom trim piece. Something about like this. This is a little too thick. So I go out, and this is just scrap pine. I go ahead and rip it to a thickness that will conceal that front edge kind of perfectly. Here you can see I got just one long stick of it, and it's just shy of a 1/2 inch thick. Then I go ahead and pull a measurement from the verticals of the face frames on the left side, and I cut those pieces like 11 1/4, put glue on the back of them, and then I just shoot them into the front edge of our plywood panels. You can adjust them up and down with your finger as you do this, smooth out any glue drops, but you just need a few brads to pin it together, and after that the repair is pretty much done. Here's the wrap up to the sink cabinet repair. You see our little screen trims in the front, both sides, got glue drying up there. The cabinet's a little out of square. They pretty much all are. I'm not too worried about that. You can caulk these seams if you want to. You can caulk these nail heads, and you can even sand the center seam if you want to. My client, after I leave, is going to paint this with the exterior grade paint that will hold up better to any type of water intrusion. But even if he didn't do that, this plywood, even though it's untreated, would hold up way better to any drips or drops from up here than that particle board. So this floor should last really good long time, and it's very strong. You see me pushing on it here with my hand. So that's how you repair a rotted sink cabinet floor. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe below, and check us out at thehonestcarpenter.com. Thanks for watching. We're now offering live video consultations and phone consultations to homeowners nationwide. To get your most important home-related questions answered by a trade expert, just visit thehonestcarpenter.com.